Lacrosse fans, welcome to the Molloy Lions men's lacrosse preview. I'm Rick Rissetto here with the head coach of the Molloy Lions men's lacrosse program, a familiar face, but in his first year as head coach of the program, Barney Dell'Aquila. Barney, again, you've been here for a few years now. You were an assistant coach here. What is the difference in your mind between how you're going to approach it as an assistant coach from last year to now being the head coach this year?
To be honest, we're not changing things a whole heck of a lot. We've tightened some things up in terms of how we do things. But in terms of our success, both on and off the field, we're looking to just kind of move straight ahead with that. So, every head coach does things a little bit differently. I think if you ask the kids if things are a little bit different, they would probably say yes. But in terms of our approach to the game and how we handle ourselves on and off the field, that's really not going to change.
Last season was very good for you guys in terms of individual accomplishments. Joe Leonard, Tom Engelhardt being the number one and number two scorers all time here in this program's history, and as well as team accomplishments. You guys had another successful season here. The stigma, I think, that comes from this conference, and I've heard you say this all the time, is that this conference is one of the better conferences, maybe the best conference on the East Coast, is that there's that hump that teams like you, teams like Chestnut Hill, never seem to get over at this point. But let's talk a little bit about, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about last year, about Joe and Tom's final year, because let's be honest, they were catalysts for this program, and they kind of put it into that stratosphere it hadn't been before.
Sure. Two obviously excellent players. Joe's an All-American. Tommy was an All-ECC guy, I think, at least 3 of the years, if not all 4 years that he was here. Did great things offensively, obviously, for us, big shoes to fill. I think obviously every team has graduation issues, and if you want to call them issues, and guys leave and guys come in to follow those guys, and I think we have enough to still be successful. Those guys were great, but everyone has to move on, and I think that offensively we still have guys who can get it done, and we're going to move on.
You talk about those guys that are coming back. A few jump to mind: Peter Clark, Austin Valenti. Those are guys who I assume you're going to be looking to lead that offense as well. But let's talk about Ryan Toomey a little bit, because I think the year that he had maybe was a little bit out of left field, in that a freshman goalkeeper sometimes can be good, sometimes goes through the motions, but to be Conference Rookie of the Year and to have all the accolades that came with it as a young freshman, were you pleasantly surprised by that, or did you expect that coming in?
I don't know if the expectations were that high. We kind of didn't know, I don't think, how the whole goalie situation was going to work out. I think we had 4 goalies last year. We had a transfer come in. So we kind of were just letting it play out, and he stepped up and got the job based on his work ethic and his ability to stop the ball, and he just continued to do well as the year went along, and there really was no question about who the number one goalie was as soon as we started to play, and he held on to the job and obviously had a great year, and again, being, as you said, being named Rookie of the Year is pretty impressive for anyone, especially for a goalie. So he had a heck of a year, and he's off to a pretty nice start as well this year.
Now to those seniors that we talked about a little bit: Peter Clark, Austin Valenti, a guy like Demetrius Jimenez will also be looked at as senior leaders and, really big parts of this program as well. But there's a lot of guys who are also doing some things in terms of younger players that are coming up. We mentioned Toomey. There's a lot of other sophomores and juniors that are coming up and being a big part of this program. What is it about this whole team dynamic, and you can speak to this a little bit as well, this team dynamic, especially in lacrosse, that is so vital to how you guys are going to succeed this year?
Yeah, I think it's always obviously a big part, but I think when you have 2 almost superstar kind of guys like we had, a little bit of a tendency to let them take on a bigger burden maybe, and I think we did that a little bit at times last year, not mostly, but at times. And I think now our approach is more, even from our standpoint as coaches, and also I think you could see in the kids and how they're playing right now, is that they realize we have good players, but I don't know that they're going to look at it as this guy is the guy. We have guys, and like you mentioned some of those seniors. Those are our top guys, and we're going to rely on them. But I think they move the ball real well on offense. They they communicate super well on defense. And so that whole team concept, working with each other, and all is showing itself right now, and I think it's only going to get better as we move along.
You talk about all the guys that you have on your team. Well, what are the guys of the freshmen really that you've looked at that you guys have had here and you've kind of seen them be fall ball, now transitioning into winter ball, going to be season very soon? Which of the freshmen have you seen that have really shown you a lot of improvement, a lot of stamina, and a lot of things that might include them in some major playing time down the road or even on the onset?
That's right. The group as a whole in the fall, I think, was somewhat, I don't want to say surprising, but I probably beyond our expectations. We had expectations of maybe not helping right away, maybe a couple of guys. But Michael Schur is a midfielder who's looks like he's going to get a regular run right now. Athletic kid, smart kid. You know, you tell him to do something once, he knows it, and that's really all you have to tell him. We also have Jake Valero, who's long stick defenseman, who's doing some really good things, and there's a lot of buzz from the other guys about how well he's playing as well. And those are two guys who stand out right now. And again, there are other guys who are doing well, and again, not maybe right now, but as we move along this season and again in the future, I think they're going to be a pretty nice part of what we're doing here.
The East Coast Conference preseason poll just came out, and it had Molloy slotted 6th, had LIU Post, NYIT, Dowling, Mercy, Chestnut Hill ahead of your team. Reaction at all to being where you are, being in that middle of the pack?
It's probably a little low, I think. Even the national poll, which had us at 19, it's always nice to be recognized, of course. You really can't do anything about that until you start playing games, though. So in my mind, you have to go out and start winning. If we do that, then all that poll stuff will change. Again, that's probably from the fact that you graduated an All-American, and two of your two top scorers who had a heck of a lot of points. So apparently they don't have a lot of confidence, I guess, in what the rest of the team is, but we do. So our guys know that, and our expectations are what they are, and they're certainly higher than that.
How did these early season non-conference games, in your mind, how are they going to prepare you for that conference grind? Because with the teams that are ahead of you, we mentioned LIU Post, we mentioned Mercy, who has had some success recently. We've mentioned Dowling, who, Tim Boyle's got a decent program out there as well, and NYIT with Bill Dunn. We mentioned all of those names with all those coaches. How do the early season non-conference games that you guys have prepare you guys for that grind towards that ECC tournament coming up?
Yeah, I think what I found in being here for the last couple of years is there's really no gimmies out there. So, if you try to schedule that one's in the bag, and I'm not sure that there really are too many of those. So I think everyone that we play is definitely going to help us get to that. We're playing Wheeling Jesuit early. They were ranked during the season last year. We're playing Merrimack, who is in the top, I believe they're in the top 5. So that's just going to get us ready, like you said, for those big games. Once the ECC schedule comes around. So I think it's definitely going to get us ready for once we hit that part of the schedule.
And you mentioned those early games as well. The big thing for me also is that how about the teams that are below you in the conference standings? Because UDC is still a relatively new program, but they've got a few names to them. Dominican College has some talent on their squad, even though they're picked last in the conference. Roberts Wesleyan is also another team that really overlooking any of those teams, and obviously you know this, and I'm sure you tell the guys this as well, overlooking any of those teams is problematic because they can trip you up just as easily. So what is it to just keeping their minds square and focused on the opponent at hand, not worrying about the standings, letting those that worry about the standings focus on that instead of you guys?
Right. We've mentioned already, I think the idea of being focused and, again, having that right frame of mind where you really shouldn't even have to look at who's on your schedule, just knowing that you have a game that day. And if you take the same approach every single time, there won't be an issue. Human nature tells you when you look at a team that maybe doesn't have a lot of wins, might be a little bit of a drop-off in that. So we're really trying to, again, stay with that idea of being focused, Yeah, we have a game. Don't even look at who we're playing. Come out as if you're playing the game of your life. And if you don't lose, you do lose, I should say. It could affect your season. And really, every single game that you play, if you don't get one, it could definitely affect your season, whether it's at a conference or in conference.
I want to ask you about the first game, but before I do that, something that just came to me. How much of a difference is there between being a coach and being a teacher? Because I know that's your other occupations, that you're a gym teacher. It seems like they intertwine at times, but when do you switch the two hats, if you will? When do you switch from being the coach to being the teacher, to just letting them kind of go out and do their own thing, to teach them? These are guys who have played lacrosse all their lives. Where's the difference for you? When does that kind of happen?
I think it's one and the same, honestly. I think being a coach, you are a teacher. You're teaching the kids how to play the game. You're teaching the kids how to approach things, which, and the whole idea of playing sports, it's a huge comparison to life and how you approach things, how you get things accomplished. So I think, anyone who's a coach, quote unquote, is their profession. They are also a teacher. I really think it is one and the same. So you're teaching the skills, you're teaching them how to play, you're putting in a game plan and all those things. Those things are being taught, but I think there's, it's coaching, but it's also teaching.
Last question is about that first game on February the 20th at Skelos Sports Complex against Assumption College, 2 p.m. They were a 9-8 team last year, but they play in that Northeast 10 conference. And you mentioned Merrimack, and we talk about all those other teams that are in that conference that are ranked inside that top 20 of the USILA. Getting out to a good start, imperative for, and you would agree, imperative for having a solid season, or having a great season, or having a magical run. What is it about that first game that is exciting to you, and what is it about that is jittery to you? What are kind of the emotions that are running through you as you get closer to it?
Yeah, there's listen, we went up there and we played in one of the wildest weather situations I've ever seen. It was crazy. It was about 50 degrees when we started the game. Clouds rolled in. It dropped about 20 degrees. It snowed, and then it cleared again, but it was about 30 degrees colder. We outplayed them statistically, but it wound up being like a 9-5 game. I think we outshot them maybe 50-20 or something along those lines, but we couldn't really finish. As I said earlier, there's no real gimmies. So the idea is, like you said, it's exciting to get the season rolling and all. The concern is just that maybe look at it's only Assumption, and again, it's been discussed that there is no only team on the schedule. So that idea of being focused, as I mentioned before, is big. We've been practicing pretty well. We have some scrimmages coming up, so we're hoping to do well there, and then hopefully just roll that right into game one.
So again, Molloy opens the 2016 campaign on Saturday, February 20th, a 2 p.m. game in Rockville Center at Darcy Field against Assumption College. Will be a rematch from last year, along with the next game on that 27th, a 12 o'clock start, Wheeling Jesuit, another team who, again, may not seem like a major opponent, but they're going to take it very seriously, as we all should. Head coach Barney Dell'Aquila of the men's lacrosse program, thank you for joining us. Best of luck to you guys as the season goes along. We're sure to talk to you around May or so when the season wraps up. We'll have a little discussion after that as well.